I know that you do some photography yourself. How has it taught, what has it taught you in general?
Photography, it's taught me to look, to pay attention. I mean, I'm always telling my students that the world doesn't need any more photographs, and it doesn't need any more video, and it doesn't need any more audio. What it needs is people who pay attention.
It was cold, you hid your hands inside your sleep. As we walked, I heard the laugh.
We don't communicate stuff only with words. We are so attuned to visuals. And so if you want to teach to somebody's brain, you've got to teach visual.
Lie down with them if I only could.
Photography is a great way of engaging students. First of all, is something that they are interested in outside of school because of the prevalence of social media and so on. Photographs are really interesting to people, especially these days, but I think probably forever. Photographs, as long as they've been around, they're intriguing. It's this weird thing of capturing a moment, a slice in time, even as you move through it. You know, I think it has some pull on people.
Inside my pockets that we found.
But in my history textbook, you know that picture of the guy standing in front of the tank?
Yeah.
I remember, like, that really, I mean, it struck with me, and I was like, wow. I mean, a visual made me realize that this is a real thing. It actually happened, whereas if you just read a history book, I feel like it's just a story.
Do you remember anything written in that same text?
No.
Think about how much more real a time period is when you bring it up. Like this is like, imagine if you were doing something in biology and you're talking about surgery, and this was an image you showed of an early operation, and then you contrasted that with an image, you know, of an modern operating room, right? And you talked about, well, what's different? What's the same? You know, these people aren't even wearing gloves. You know, this might have been before germ theory, before they realized that they had to keep people from getting infections. But you see, like, you could say, well, people learned that they should wash their hands. But seeing it, and then seeing a modern operating room and talking about it, think about how much more that is going to stick with you.
Previous research from teachers and feedback from students can give us hope in what opportunities can present themselves in education today. David Cleveland wrote an article for Vision magazine about educational uses of photography. Math is a huge part of photography. Through photographs, you can demonstrate symmetry. You can also use apertures to calculate the area of a circle. Approximating the appropriate shutter speed in the aperture to create the proper exposure also requires accurate calculations. The same is true when attempting a certain aesthetic in photography, like a blur or a pan. For a blur, you have to have a shutter speed longer than the 60th of a second. Anything under this compensates for camera shake from your hands. A pan requires the photographer to move with his subject, averaging in the lighting and aperture but still capturing your desired image. There is also a window to see the photography in a scientific perspective. Photography is really all about understanding how light works. Photography can help us work with and understand focal length calculations, refraction, and spectrums. All these aspects of photography require math and science skills and critical thinking that would provide entertaining and creative project to any classroom. Using your knowledge to think about the properties of light and fractions of shutter speeds would excite students and engage them to get passionate about what they're learning. This type of tactic would not only excite students but prepare them for the future that's growing into a more visual world every day.
They're being communicated with visuals. It would be a loss for us not to teach them how to communicate with visuals in the same sense. So I use that to help my students communicate. I teach them how to write, I teach them how to read, I teach them how to do videos, but a big element of what I do is photography, because I think that it takes a lot of thought, it takes a lot of critical thinking to communicate a certain idea through a photo, no words.
suggests that the emotional center of your brain is very closely related to what you see.
So what can photography actually do for us? There are many different ways we can aid education with photography. This idea is not as far-fetched as some may believe. Dorothea Lange said, while there is perhaps a province in which the photograph can tell us nothing more than what we can see with our own eyes, there is another which proves to us how little our eyes actually permit us to see. The same is true with knowledge. Knowledge prevents our eyes from closing. When we learn to observe our world, our eyes can sometimes see exactly what needs to be seen.